matter how hard development teams try, bugs and glitches are a permanent fixture within the realm of video games. Some of them may be quite small, such as a texture not rendering in the correct manner or the incorrect animation being used, but over the years, despite there now being an extensive amount of focus placed on quality assurance, numerous high-profile glitches have still managed to find their ways into a whole host of games, no matter their size or scale. Some of them have ended up being rather humorous and creepy, with the no-face glitch from Assassin's Creed Unity serving as one of the finest examples, but others, like the infamous elevator glitch in Fallout 4, towed the other line, causing mass frustration as they made the game unplayable and would result in the player having to start the game again from scratch. And then there's the glitches that sit somewhere in the middle. They affect how the game plays, sometimes making it rather easy to progress through their exploitation, and sometimes serving as a handicap the player didn't even know was there. And it's those glitches that we're going to run through today, and we're going to kick things off with the damage overflow glitch found in Final Fantasy VII. But before we do, a quick update from us. We have just put live the pre-launch page for our upcoming Kickstarter campaign for our book, The Legacy of the Crystal. If you're interested, we'd encourage you to follow the project so you get notified the moment it goes live. There's a link in the description below. Over the years, many games bearing the Final Fantasy name have featured some form of overflow glitch. They occur when the game is unable to handle numbers that fall outside of the expected range, and when that happens, it can lead to unexpected results, with the most common being elements going far beyond the standard limits imposed within each gameplay system. Final Fantasy VII is notorious for this, and technically every character could take advantage of the overflow glitch to break their damage limit. But for most, its application was itself quite limited. Many of the characters would need to consume hero drinks, rely on luck, and be fighting against the right kind of enemy for the overflow glitch to happen. But there were two exceptions, Vincent Valentine and Barrett Wallace. Those same restrictions still applied, but they could also encounter the overflow glitch through other means, and in the case of Vincent, it meant that it would be possible to kill every single enemy featured throughout the experience in just one turn, with Ruby Weapon serving as the only exception. To bring about this glitch, Vincent would first need to have acquired the Death Penalty, a weapon that increased its damage based on the number of enemies defeated throughout the game. Within the code, this was capped at 65,535 enemies defeated, but once Vincent reached 65,408 enemies defeated, players would be able to take advantage of the overflow glitch, allowing them to instantly kill almost every enemy in the game. If you're interested in learning more about this, we'd definitely recommend checking out a video from 4A Productions where they talk in detail about how the glitch works and how you can make use of it yourself to strut around and fell mighty foes with ease. Even though it was a more modern release and therefore had a smaller array of glitches and bugs that could be exploited, Final Fantasy IV The After Years still ended up having a rather useful oversight that players could stumble upon that would allow them to absorb all elemental damage inflicted upon the affected character. This exploit was made possible by equipping an armlet and armor combination, a pretty natural occurrence, but a specific combination provided a benefit that the developers had not anticipated. As part of the game's coding, it was only possible for the behind-the-scenes calculations to keep track of one type of elemental resistance tier per character, and they were placed in a hierarchy. Absorption would take priority over nullification, which would then take priority over reduction. It meant that if two pieces of equipment were worn, the higher priority resistance would be applied irrespective of the intended source. This mechanic was built out on purpose, as it meant the cursed ring could be used in conjunction with another piece of armor to absorb the relevant element, albeit at a cost of having all stats reduced by 15 points. But there was an unexpected beneficiary, as the developers did not account for other combinations, and the most broken would occur when the Fire Staff was combined with the Protect Ring. The Fire Staff was the only piece of armor in the game that would allow the wearer to absorb an element, in this case fire. But because of the priority ordering, when combined with the Protect Ring, which granted resistance to all elements, it would upgrade the Fire Scarf to be able to absorb all elements as opposed to just fire, something that would be incredibly beneficial for the player to use to their advantage. The original Final Fantasy featured an extensive list of bugs, to the point where it would be easy to produce an entire video on the subject. But today, we're going to focus on one unfortunate glitch that meant some of the more famed job classes would have their application in battle diminished without the player even realizing it was happening. When starting off Final Fantasy, players would be asked to pick their party, and for each member they could choose from one of 6 jobs. 3 were melee based and 3 were magic based. For the magic-based jobs, intelligence was meant to be a crucial stat, used to influence how much damage or healing various spells could do, but in the original Famicom, NES and PlayStation versions, the intelligence stat was glitched, and this meant it never actually factored into spell output calculations. As a consequence, even though individual spells had their own accuracy and damage values, there ended up being no stat that would allow the caster to enter into the equation. So if a level 5 Black Mage were to cast Fire 2, or a level 50 Black Mage were to cast Fire 2, the damage output would be the same. This also applied to white magic spells, and it meant red mages were no less powerful than their black or white equivalents outside of the spells they had access to. This particular oversight was remedied in later versions of the game, but in those earlier versions, it could end up having a significant influence over the types of jobs people would use for their party setup. Final Fantasy VI featured so many characters, weapons, pieces of equipment, enemies and locations that the appearance of a glitch or two was almost inevitable. But one of the bugs that surfaced upon launch ended up becoming legendary due to how much potential it had to alter a playthrough. After being acquired as a playable character, Realm's main application in combat was her sketch ability. It would allow her to paint a portrait of one of the enemies she was facing, something that would then allow her to use one of its attacks. It was a pretty cool twist on the Blue Mage concept, but a bug crept in that meant if Realm missed the target she was trying to sketch, the game did not know what to do. It would lead to all kinds of things happening, from on-screen graphical glitches to the game even freezing in true computer says no fashion. But the main reason this bug has become so well known is because it could be manipulated to put numerous items into your inventory at the maximum amount, such as dirks, gem boxes and sprint shoes. This made exploiting the sketch bug very powerful, as not only could you gain access to a huge volume of items without having to grind them, you could also gain these items without having to travel very far, and these could then be used or sold, should you wish, to gain vast amounts of gil. In short, if you know what you're doing, this bug is very valuable, and I'd recommend you check out Master Zed's guide at the Caves of Nash if you'd like to find out more about how you can use it to your advantage. One of the more interesting glitches to appear across the franchise could be found in Dissidia Final Fantasy, and it could lead to encounters ending with a rather unexpected conclusion. As it was a one-on-one fighting game, a heavy focus was no doubt placed on balancing and ensuring all moves worked as intended. These moves would then be used to try and ensure victory, but as in many other fighting games, it became possible for a situation to occur whereby 2 characters could execute an HP attack at the same time, and instead of one move cancelling the other out, they would both land, causing both characters to take damage at the exact same time. Should this scenario have occurred when both characters had enough bravery points to land a killing blow, the consequence would have been a double KO, which is pretty logical. The issue was that even though the situation could occur, the developers didn't really plan around it. So instead of it being a double KO, resulting in either a draw or loss to both players, the game would still determine a winner and a loser. Despite there being numerous theories as to how the victor is decided by the game's code, it's still unknown what the determining factor actually is, and there's a thought that it may just be a random element, so sometimes the player will get lucky, and sometimes they won't. For the penultimate entry on our list, we're going to take a look at Final Fantasy XII, a game that featured an incredibly innovative gameplay system. Not only did it dispense with the traditional ATB system to use what became known as the Active Dimension battle system, gambits could also be used to program party members, ensuring they performed certain actions when encountering a predetermined scenario. But due to the complexities behind the system, it featured a glitch or two, and one of them would allow player characters to revive themselves without following the proper process. This glitch would require some specific timing on the part of the player, as well as the correct action being taken that would lead to the knocked out status being enacted. But if done right, the unit would not fall in battle if they received a killing blow, as they could either use a Phoenix Down, Raise or Arise immediately, meaning they could go back to taking actions as if nothing ever happened. It made the glitch quite valuable to master, as it could save crucial downtime in specific fights where the tide had turned against the player and things were starting to look a little bit dicey. And that brings us onto the final glitch of this list, which is perhaps the most powerful due to what it enabled the player to do. Final Fantasy Tactics is pretty notorious for being unforgiving, locking players into passages of play they cannot overcome. But once the mechanics have been mastered, exploiting the game becomes second nature, and it becomes easy to steamroll through many of the foes that are placed before Ramza and his allies. If you're interested in taking a shortcut though, there's a glitch that exists which allows the player to take an infinite number of actions, all without reply, and it's been dubbed the Quickening. To use this glitch, the player would need to have a pretty specific party setup, with the core component being that there needed to be at least 3 characters, each equipped with the time-made reaction ability, Critical Quick. Alongside that, other abilities from complementary jobs would also need to be learned, like Disbelief, and they would also need to be in critical status. The glitch would then fire when the game got confused about the damage that should ensue, something that would trigger the Critical Quick reaction ability. It's a nasty trick, and although it won't work for every encounter you face throughout Final Fantasy Tactics, it certainly makes the game much easier if you want to reduce the challenge and exploit the system. And with that, I think we're done. They were 7 game-changing glitches that have appeared across the Final Fantasy franchise. Be sure to let us know in the comments below which you found to be the most interesting, and feel free to share your favourite glitches or bugs that you've encountered. And if you enjoyed the video, why not hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Alright guys, this is Daryl signing out. I'd like to extend a big thank you to all of our YouTube and Patreon membership supporters, especially Benjamin Snow, Gregory and Anthony Hoffman, who are super special Onion Knight supporters, and of course a big thank you to everyone for watching this video. I'll see you all again soon for more Final Fantasy goodness.